Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations hearing will now come to order. Today, the Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations is holding a hearing entitled In the Dark, Lack of Transparency in the Live Event Ticketing Industry. The purpose of today's hearing is to examine policies and practices in the live event ticketing industry. The Chair will now recognize herself for purposes of an opening statement. Today's hearing will examine the lack of transparency in the live event ticketing industry, an industry that's rife with practices that are harmful to consumers. While many of us may remember standing in line at the box office to purchase tickets to a concert or sporting event, or even buying tickets outside of an arena from a scalper, most ticket sales to live events now take place online through apps or ticketing websites. In 2017 alone, online ticketing represented a $9 billion market in the United States. Unfortunately, the industry's online financial success has often been at the expense of the consumer. While it is certainly easier to buy tickets to live events today, online ticketing sales have led to anti-consumer practices across the industry. These practices have been well documented by both state and federal authorities. In 2016, for example, the New York Attorney General investigated the live event ticketing marketplace and found that, quote, ticketing is a fixed game. More recently, the Government Accountability Office found a number of concerning consumer protection issues in the industry, including difficulty buying tickets at face value, a lack of transparency around ticket fees, and misleading marketing practices. In response to consumer concerns, in June 2019, the Federal Trade Commission held a workshop designed to discuss problematic practices in the ticketing industry. As a part of that effort, consumer groups raised a host of consumer protection issues in the online marketplace to the FTC, including practices that misled consumers about ticket prices or availability, the prevalence of certain ticketing websites that may confuse consumers about the entity from which they are purchasing tickets, and restrictions that limit a consumer's ability to transfer tickets. On the heels of these investigations and the FTC workshop last November, the committee continued its effort in examining the ticketing industry by sending bipartisan letters to 6 ticketing companies that make up a diverse cross-section of the industry. The committee's letter inquired into a range of issues that impact consumers. The company's responses and the committee's investigation validated our concerns that consumers face a number of disturbing practices when trying to buy tickets online. Today's hearing will give us the opportunity to hear directly from companies about these practices and what can be done. In particular, we will focus on 5 key findings today. First, consumers attempting to buy tickets online continue to be confronted by high hidden fees. These fees are often not disclosed until the end of the transaction, which may mislead consumers about the total cost of the ticket and frustrate their ability to accurately compare prices. Today, I want the companies who engage in this practice to explain why they wait until the very end of the buying process to pile on fees instead of providing the total cost up front, which is known as all-in pricing. Second, companies that place restrictions on consumers from transferring purchase tickets to another individual may be limiting choice for consumers and driving up prices. I want to know why certain companies seem to be making it harder to transfer or to resell a ticket that he has already purchased, and whether this practice is stifling the market and harming consumers. I also want to know if the practice really prevents fraud or if it's just an excuse to limit consumer choice. Third, consumers appear to be impacted by a lack of transparency relating to ticket availability. Consumers may be unaware that only a limited number of seats frequently could be available by the time tickets go on sale to the general public. For example, the New York Attorney General's investigation found that a majority of tickets for the most popular concerts were reserved for industry insiders or pre-sale events. I want to know how often this occurs, why it's occurring, and why some companies in the primary market are reluctant to let consumers know about the actual number of tickets available at the time of general sale. The final 2 findings relate to white label websites and the selling of speculative tickets. White label websites may employ deceptive marketing practices to make consumers believe they are purchasing tickets from an official website when truly they are not. A speculative ticket refers to instances in which a seller offers a ticket for sale on a retail sale exchange before the seller has the ticket in hand. I want to know how prevalent these practices are, how they impact consumers, and whether the industry believes we should limit them. As you can see, there's a lot to discuss today. It's clear that many of these practices place consumers at a disadvantage when buying tickets. I look forward to discussing how we can put the consumer first as we look towards finding solutions to make the industry much more transparent. And with that, I'll yield back, and I'll recognize the ranking member, Mr. Guthrie from Kentucky, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair DeGette, for holding this hearing. Many Americans have very fond memories of their first concert, their first football or baseball game. I know I do. I remember my first concert when I was 11 years old. I got to see Elvis. And I think what I remember about more than anything was the effort to get tickets to see Elvis. My uncle had a dental office right next to the facility, and they rotated people going to wait in long lines. And as they kept adding shows, we kept getting opportunities to see Elvis, so I had the chance to do that. But it's completely changed now, and I know as we have everlasting memories of these concerts, purchasing tickets for live events can be a difficult process for consumers. And whether it's extra fees, transferability of tickets, deceptive white label websites, or speculative tickets, all of these issues can negatively impact the consumer experience. This is why we wrote a bipartisan letter to 6 companies in November asking them about their policies and practices as it relates to live event ticketing. Some of these issues create minor annoyances or inconveniences, such as not being able to see the total cost of the ticket with taxes and fees until the end of the purchase flow. But other issues can create major inconveniences of financial loss for consumers, such as being denied entry into an event they potentially traveled a long distance to attend because, unbeknownst to them, it turns out the ticket they bought was not valid. The Federal Trade Commission and states' attorneys general are the cops on the beat when it comes to overseeing this industry. For example, the FTC Act prohibits unfair and deceptive acts or practices in affecting commerce, and the FTC can enforce the act for issues related to event ticketing and ticketing companies. And state attorneys general have tools to go after bad actors under their state consumer protection laws. If bad actors, some of which we see exploiting the secondary market, seek to deceive or mislead consumers, the FTC and state attorneys general can and should hold them accountable. In addition, the Better Online Ticket Sales Act of 2016, we call the BOTS Act, which became law in December of 2016, addresses ticketing issues by prohibiting the circumvention of a security measure, access control system, or other technological control measure used by online ticket issuers. Live events are not just for concerts. They encompass other forms of entertainment, such as theater and sporting events. Some of the issues we plan to discuss today do not equally apply to all events, and I think it is an important distinction to make throughout today's discussion where applicable. For example, with respect to ticket availability, a venue that a team plays at, such as a stadium or arena, has a static number of tickets. In other words, you know how many seats that stadium holds, and therefore how many tickets are available for any given event. Conversely, with concerts, the stage and sound system configuration vary by artist and event type, impacting the number of seats that cannot be used because they're behind or the side of the stage. As a result, the number of tickets for that type of events vary. In addition, at today's hearing, we expect to discuss white label websites, which are sales websites built by one company that allows affiliates to use the software to build their own uniquely branded websites. While white label websites are not inherently bad, there are deceptive white label websites that often appear as paid results of internet searches for venues and events and contain a URL and/or language and images on the website that are designed in a way that might mislead consumers to think they are purchasing tickets directly from a venue or an artist. We think that it is an important distinction to make as well as we move forward in today's discussion. Today's hearing serves as an important opportunity for us to examine and to dive into some of those concerns and issues that consumers face, while making the important distinctions between event types and legitimate versus nefarious practices, and to discuss ways to better inform and protect the consumer. Bottom line, consumers should be able to clearly know what they are buying, who they're buying it from, and what is included in the price of the ticket. Ensure that what they purchase is legitimate and will be delivered to them in time for the event and is valid and will be honored at the venue. I thank our witnesses for being here today and being part of this important discussion, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Chair now recognizes the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Pallone, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman DeGette. Today's hearing will bring some much-needed transparency to the live event ticketing industry. Every day, millions of Americans shop on the internet for tickets for live events like sporting events and concerts. In some ways, the internet has made this experience more convenient, but it also has led to consumers being ripped off as they try to navigate a ticketing industry that for too long has operated in the dark. Consumers now face a myriad of harmful practices that can lead to them paying more for tickets or paying for tickets that are prohibited. They're prohibited from reselling or transferring if they're unable to attend the event. In some instances, consumers are not even receiving the ticket as promised after they purchased it. This hearing is meant not only to better understand the many challenges consumers face in the ticketing marketplace, but to also identify steps to protect consumers from being ripped off. This committee has taken action in recent years to improve the ticket buying experience for consumers. In 2016, the committee and the House passed H.R. 5104, the Better Online Ticket Sales Act of 2018, or the BOTS Act. This legislation was signed into law later that year. It cracks down on the use of computer programs that instantly buy up large quantities of tickets before real people can buy them, so they can later be resold at higher prices. Also in 2016, we asked the Government Accountability Office to investigate consumer protection issues in the live ticketing marketplace so that we could better understand the problem. And GAO's investigation underscored a host of challenges that consumers face when trying to buy tickets online. For example, they found that websites often fail to display or disclose all the fees up front, so that the total cost of a ticket can only be known at checkout. This makes it difficult for consumers to compare prices with other sites. GAO also found that professional resellers have a competitive advantage over the typical consumer attempting to buy tickets on the primary market. This can force consumers to the secondary market, where they may face significant price increases. GAO also found that consumers can face deceptive marketing practices, including websites that may look similar to that of an official venue, but instead often resell tickets for marked up prices. And these are all troubling examples of how consumers are being taken advantage of when they're just trying to purchase a ticket for a live event. It was these continuing concerns that led the committee last year to launch a bipartisan investigation into the industry. And our investigation found that the live events ticketing industry is still engaging in a number of anti-consumer practices. Consumers still experience hidden fees, restrictions on transferring a ticket to someone else, and deceptive and misleading websites. It's clear that the ticketing marketplace needs reform in order to ensure the market is transparent, fair, and working for consumers. In order to help correct some of the problems that still persist in the industry, last year I joined Representative Pascrell in sponsoring the BOSS Act. This legislation would provide much-needed transparency and regulation to help level the playing field for consumers. In the meantime, we need answers to several important questions today. We need to know what's going on what it will take really for ticket sellers to list the total all-in price of the tickets up front on their platforms. We need to know why primary market sellers refuse to inform consumers about how many tickets are actually on sale to the general public. And it's time the industry is transparent with consumers about how many tickets are being held back for industry insiders, reserved for pre-sales, or placed directly on the secondary market at a higher price. We also need to know what additional disclosures are needed to protect consumers from potential deception or outright fraud by white label websites and the sale of speculative tickets. And finally, we need to know why hurdles and restrictions continue to be put in place for those looking to transfer tickets. So it's time we finally bring transparency to this marketplace so that we can protect consumers, which of course is always our primary goal. And unless somebody else wants my time, I'm going to yield back, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Walden, for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and welcome to all our witnesses and guests. Thank you all for being here. As Ranking Member Guthrie mentioned, purchasing tickets to a live event is something we can all relate to. I didn't know he was 11 when he saw Elvis, though. That's, yeah, wow, you're old. Live entertainment, whether it's Whether it's a concert, a theater event, or a sporting event can lead to once-in-a-lifetime experiences that create lasting memories. However, a lack of transparency or deceptive acts and/or fraud in the industry can cause a lot of frustration, to say the least, in some cases financial harm to consumers. Some of these issues include deceptive white label websites, you've heard about that, speculative tickets, fraudulent tickets, to name just a few. I look forward to hearing what the 6 companies before us today are doing about that, and what you're doing to combat some of these issues, protect consumers, and ensure consumer satisfaction. As Mr. Guthrie mentioned, it's important we keep in mind distinctions with ticket availability issues, different types of white label websites, and more. But it's equally important that we balance consumer protection with potentially unintended consequences, to the industry that will ultimately negatively impact consumers as we explore potential solutions to some of these issues. For example, a 2018 U.S. Government Accountability Office report that was requested by, as you heard, the bipartisan leaders of the committee on event ticket sales and market characteristics and consumer protection issues noted that there are advantages and disadvantages to certain practices, and in some cases it's unclear whether new requirements would introduce new compliance challenges for the ticketing industry, such as requiring companies to disclose proprietary information. Therefore, it's important that this subcommittee gathers all the information necessary and the facts before determining what the potential solutions may be to further enhance consumer protection within the industry. Furthermore, the Better Online Ticket Sales Act of 2016, known as the BOTS Act, was signed into law in 2016, yet neither the Federal Trade Commission nor the states have taken enforcement action under this statute to date. In addition, the issues outlined in the committee's bipartisan letter sent to the 6 companies in November, it would be helpful to hear from you all before us today whether you see bots as an issue in the industry now, and how, if at all, it is harmful to consumers, so the issue of the bots. I understand bad actors utilizing bots to game our system may be beyond our borders. That does not mean they are beyond our reach. I'm proud of this committee's leadership on extending the U.S. Safe Web Act that reaffirms the FTC's ability to hold foreign bad actors accountable. As with many problems, there's no easy fix, and that's probably true with this as well. This committee should work with the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, as part of our investigation to figure out how we can address not only this bots issue, but also other ticket issues that present concrete harms to consumers. The most important thing to keep in mind across the issues that will be discussed today is the need for transparency and appropriate disclosures to consumers. And if there's adequate transparency, consumers will then have the necessary information they need in order to make an informed decision about whether or not they want to purchase a live event ticket, who they want to purchase the ticket from, and what kind of ticket they want to purchase, and what the breakdown is for the total cost of the ticket, including taxes and fees. For example, if a consumer knows that a ticket's dynamically priced and knows what it means for a ticket to be dynamically priced, it should then be left to the consumer to decide whether or not they want to purchase a dynamically priced ticket. In addition, the limits placed on a ticket that designate whether the ticket's transferable or not should be clearly disclosed to consumers before the consumer purchases the ticket, so that consumer understands the limitations placed on the ticket to help avoid possible frustration and financial loss down the road. So again, I want to thank you all for being here today, testifying before the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee. I look forward to listening to your testimony and working with my colleagues here on the committee on both sides to ensure that we make fully informed decisions that enhance consumer protections. So that, Madam Chair, I would yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back, and that concludes the opening statements. I ask unanimous consent that members' written opening statements be made a part of the record. Without objection, so ordered. I now want to introduce our witnesses for today's hearing, and I want to thank all of you for coming today. Ms. Amy Howe, who's the President and Chief Operating Officer, Ticketmaster. Mr. Brian Perez, who's the Chief Executive Officer, Access. Ms. Stephanie Burns, Vice President and General Counsel, StubHub. Mr. Ryan Fitz, Vice President, Legal Affairs, Vivid Seats. Mr. Don Vaccaro, Founder and Chief Executive, Ticket Network. And Mr. Joe Chody, President and Chief Executive Officer, Tickets.com. Again, thanks to all of you. And I know all of you are aware the committee's holding an investigative hearing, and when doing so, we have the practice of taking our testimony under oath. Does anyone object to testifying under oath today? Let the record reflect the witnesses have responded no. The chair then advises you that under the rules of the House and the rules of the committee, you are entitled to be accompanied by counsel. Does any of you desire to be accompanied by counsel today? Let the record reflect that the witnesses have responded no. So if you would please rise and raise your right hand so you may be sworn in. Do you swear the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You may be seated. Let the record reflect the witnesses responded affirmatively, and you're now under oath and subject to the penalty set forth in Title 18, Section 1001 of the U.S. Code. The chair now recognizes our witnesses for a 5-minute summary of each of their written statements. In front of you is a microphone, a timer, and a series of lights. The timer will count down your time, and the red light will turn on when your 5 minutes has expired. So now I'd first like to recognize you, Ms. Howe, for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Good morning. Chairman Pallone, Ranking Member Walden, Chair DeGette, Ranking Member Guthrie, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Amy Howe, and I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer of Ticketmaster North America. As a leader in the live event ticketing industry, we share your interest in improving the ticketing ecosystem to better protect consumers. Before addressing the specifics of these important issues, I'd like to offer some important context. The live entertainment industry is like no other. It's all about once-in-a-lifetime experiences to draw the most passionate fans.
Excuse me, Ms. Howe, if you can just move that microphone a little closer. We've been
Sure,
having
is that better?
problems with them dropping off. That's better, thank you.
Thank you. To draw the most passionate fans on earth to unforgettable moments in time. As we like to say, live only happens once. Sounds simple, but it helps remind our team that for each fan we serve, we have only one chance to get it right. We want the fan experience to be memorable and, importantly, simple, safe, and transparent. We do our best every day to deliver on this promise and keep Ticketmaster free from the unethical and illegal activities that hurt consumers. The greatest challenge is simply supply and demand. Even in the world's biggest venues, events have limited capacity. This imbalance naturally causes disappointment for fans who are unable to get tickets and, unfortunately, opportunity for bad actors to prosper. We invest millions of dollars annually toward protecting our platforms so fans, clients, and brokers can avoid issues created by bad actors and engage within a legitimate, reliable ticketing marketplace. Unfortunately, there will be always those who want to cheat the system, take advantage of fans, and give our industry a bad name. The committee has rightly called out many of these tactics: deceptive websites, speculative tickets, bots, and lack of transparency, amongst others. When we received the committee's November inquiry, we saw that we have many of the same concerns. As we've shared with the committee, Ticketmaster bans speculative ticketing on our platform, we report deceptive websites, we combat bots, and we support all-in pricing. Let me quickly touch on each of these. A leading obstacle to fans' ability to access tickets fairly is the proliferation of sophisticated consumer automation, or bots, which access thousands of tickets to resell them to fans at staggering prices. 40% of activity on ticketing sites today is automated, with nearly 70% of that traffic here in the US alone. Since 2018, Ticketmaster has blocked over 30 billion bot purchase attempts. We do this because we fundamentally believe tickets should go to fans at the price determined by the artist. We've also developed innovative technologies like Verified Fan and SmartQueue to weed out bots and bad actors, and we supported the 2016 Bots Act, which made bots illegal. Despite the massive investments we've made to help fans get fair access to tickets, we know this alone will not solve the problem, which is why we strongly support bolstering the Bots Act with more rigorous enforcement. Second, speculative ticketing, which is when professional sellers offer tickets they don't have and may never have, is commonplace. Earlier this month, the Rolling Stones announced their tour dates, and within minutes, before the band had even released those tickets to the general public, hundreds of spec tickets were available on other resale marketplaces, some upwards of $3,000 or 7 times face value. Ticketmaster's resale policy prohibits spec tickets. We actively remove them from our site, and we support mandated disclosures or banning the practice altogether. Next, if you Google Rolling Stone tickets, you'll likely find official-looking ticket sites which are deceptive and misleading. These sites are actually fronts for resellers trying to trick fans into believing they're buying primary tickets when in fact what is being offered are inflated resale tickets. Ticketmaster bans and reports deceptive URLs, and to ensure transparency on our marketplace, if we aren't the primary ticketer, we link to the official box office, a best practice we feel should be adopted industry-wide. Last, what consumers may not know is that every ticket we sell is owned by the event organizer, an artist, team, or venue, and not by Ticketmaster. Event organizers determine pricing, fee structure, and on-sale strategy. Then we support and implement those decisions. What everyone does know is that their total ticket price is the face plus fees. But that total should be disclosed from the outset, not at the end of the purchase process, which is why we support legislative mandating industry-wide all-in pricing and believe that there should be robust enforcement of this requirement. As a leader of our company, I work alongside more than 3,000 dedicated employees who work tirelessly every day to provide a safe, reliable, and transparent experience for our fans. And this is why we are here today, to share our approach and challenges, to hear your perspective, and to work together to identify legislative and regulatory solutions to improve the ticketing ecosystem. I truly appreciate the opportunity to discuss these important issues and look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howe. I'm now pleased to recognize Mr. Perez for 5 minutes. Mr. Perez.
Good morning, thank you. Chair DeGette, Chairman Pallone, Ranking Members Guthrie and Walden, and other distinguished members. My name is Brian Perez, and I'm the CEO of Access, a wholly owned subsidiary of Anschutz Entertainment Group, a leading sports and live entertainment company. AEG is a privately held company that operates domestically and internationally across a number of segments within the live entertainment and sports industry, including AEG Real Estate, AEG Sports, AEG Presents, and Access Ticketing. Access Ticketing provides primary and resale ticketing technology and services as the official authorized agent of various sports teams, venues, and live event promoters. I've been in the live entertainment business for over 20 years, having previously held positions at the NBA, Live Nation, the NHL's Dallas Stars, and Madison Square Garden. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to testify at today's hearing examining policies and practices in the live event ticketing industry. Our industry is one of world-class experiences and memories of a lifetime, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide our perspective on a business that impacts so many of your constituents. We are fortunate to work in this business, to be able to play some small part in these magical moments, and we fight every day to help our clients create a better fan experience because we are fans too. And I applaud the initiative of this hearing, as I believe our shared goal is to get tickets into the hands of real fans at fair prices in a seamless, secure, and clear purchase experience. Unfortunately, many of these events are limited in capacity and face excess demand. And even though artists often try to set a fair price that is available to fans from all walks of life, they are frustrated in their efforts by bad actors, chasing profits, often using illegal practices to purchase tickets before the honest fan has a chance. When paired with two of the most insidious practices to arise in our industry recently, speculative tickets and deceptive websites, it's no wonder that the consumer is left feeling disillusioned and out of luck. I'm thankful for the opportunity today to discuss how we are using technology and business practices to combat these bad actors. I also believe that thoughtful legislation with aggressive enforcement can have a positive impact on curbing these practices. Thoughtful legislation and aggressive enforcement can also help level the playing field between primary and resale marketplaces, ensuring that we are all playing by the same rules so that fans are more easily able to understand their options and the prices they are paying. We support all-in pricing at the outset of the purchase transaction as long as it is applied equally and uniformly to all ticket sellers and marketplaces. As we have seen, if there is any wiggle room, bad actors will find a way to exploit it against the innocent consumer in the name of profiteering. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to testify before the committee today and for your assistance in helping fans attend events at a fair price and in a fair manner. I look forward to answering your questions. And as the committee grapples with legislative solutions, AEG looks forward to being engaged in that process with you. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. Chair now recognizes Ms. Burns for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Good morning. Chair DeGette, Chairman Pallone, Ranking Member Guthrie, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this important hearing. StubHub shares the subcommittee's commitment to consumer protection and applauds your effort to look at the industry holistically on behalf of fans. StubHub was founded in 2000 and revolutionized secondary ticket sales by providing fans a safe, transparent, and trusted marketplace to buy and sell tickets online. StubHub has more than 130 partnerships with major sports leagues, universities, teams, venues, and artists around the world. Every transaction on StubHub is protected by our industry-leading Fan Protect guarantee. In those rare instances when there is something wrong with a ticket purchased on StubHub, we will provide a comparable or better replacement ticket, or in the limited instances where that is not possible, we provide a full refund inclusive of fees. StubHub's Fan Protect guarantee is the hallmark of our business and is why we have earned the trust of fans. Our mission is to connect fans to the joy of live events. A fair, secure, and competitive ticket marketplace is in the best interest of fans. In recent years, our mission has been complicated by anti-competitive and anti-consumer practices. Many of these issues were identified by the committee during its investigation. I'll touch on 3 of these issues today, including transferability, transparency, and deceptive URLs. First, and most importantly for consumers, is transferability. Fans should always have the option to purchase a freely transferable ticket at the initial point of sale. Primary ticket issuers are using terms and conditions and technology to place downstream restrictions on the tickets that fans have rightfully purchased. With ticket restrictions, ticket issuers can single-handedly eliminate consumer choice and foreclose competition. For over 3 decades, Ticketmaster has been the dominant primary ticket issuer, accounting for approximately 80% of tickets sold. What you may not realize is that Ticketmaster is also a prominent secondary ticket resale platform. Ticketmaster is increasingly using its dominance in primary ticketing to extend its dominance to secondary ticket sales, which harms consumers. Here's how. Through its SafeTix technology, Ticketmaster is able to disable ticket transferability completely or limit transferability solely to its proprietary platforms. Ticketmaster is using this technology to force consumers who purchase resale tickets on competing sites to complete the transaction within their own app. This means that consumers who elect to buy tickets on StubHub are forced to register with Ticketmaster, download the Ticketmaster app, and provide their personal data to Ticketmaster to receive their tickets. This practice is a blatant data grab. It has been reported that Ticketmaster will apply SafeTix technology to all of its ticket sales by 2021. This is why Congress must act now. Secondly, transparency. Bots are often blamed as the reason why fans have difficulty accessing tickets. Thankfully, Congress addressed this issue in the 2016 Bots Act. StubHub proudly supported this effort. Bots are not the only reason why fans have difficulty accessing tickets. In fact, large percentages of tickets are never made available to sale to the general public. According to a report by the New York Attorney General's Office in 2016, an average of 54% of tickets are held back for events. The average number of tickets made available to the public falls to 25% for top concerts and was noted to be as low as 12% for one concert at Madison Square Garden. In some instances, tickets are held back from the initial on sale, gradually released, and often dynamically priced to reflect the current market rate, which may be higher than the original on sale. Consumers deserve to know that ticket issuers are manipulating the release of ticket supply, resulting in higher prices. Lastly, deceptive URLs. When you buy a ticket through StubHub, you buy it on StubHub.com. StubHub does not own or operate deceptive URLs, also known as white label sites. White labels are deceptive because they mislead consumers into believing they are affiliated with the venue, artist, or team, when they are not. StubHub encourages the committee to investigate the full list of harms associated with white label sites and stands ready to assist. StubHub is committed to partnering with policymakers and industry stakeholders to promote a safe, transparent, and competitive live event ticketing industry to benefit fans across the globe. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today and for your consideration of our comments. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. Chair is now pleased to recognize Mr. Fitz for 5 minutes.
Good morning. Chair DeGette, Ranking Member Guthrie, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today on behalf of Vivid Seats.
Mr. Fitz, I'm also going to ask you to move the microphone close. Thanks.
Those of us fortunate enough to work at Vivid Seats aren't just employees, we're fans as well. And the fan experience is at the center of everything we do. We are committed to working with you to foster innovation, promote competition, and protect fans in the ticket marketplace. That is why we are pleased to announce our support for proposals that would prohibit undisclosed speculative ticket sales, prohibit deceptive marketing practices by white label websites, require upfront all-in pricing on a level playing field. And significantly, we believe that the cornerstone of any congressional action in this industry must focus on protecting fans' rights to buy and sell tickets when, where, and how they wish. This essential fan protection, known as transferability, has already been enacted by Colorado and by other states, and no state has taken this right away. Importantly, it is opposed only by primary ticket sellers with market power who are trying to tighten their grip on tickets by restricting transferability, which would leave fans with fewer choices and higher prices. The ticketing marketplace today is a tale of two channels: a resale channel that has seen vibrant competition and progress, and a primary channel that is not. Vivid Seats operates in the resale channel. I would like to take just a minute to note how far we have come. As I'm sure many of you will remember, the resale market looked very different before Vivid Seats and companies like it came on the scene. Back then, fans who were not fortunate enough to get a ticket through the primary seller had no safe and convenient way to obtain tickets, and fans who had tickets but could not use them had no safe and convenient way to sell them. Many fans had to resort to unsecured channels like unverified internet listings or back alley sales, where counterfeit tickets were all too common. I remember back in the 90s trying to buy Cubs tickets on a street corner, never able to compare choices and always worried I was being sold a fake ticket. Vivid Seats was created to solve this problem. Today, if fans want to buy tickets at the last minute for an event that's otherwise sold out, our platform allows them to do so. If fans have tickets that they cannot use, maybe something came up at work or a sudden illness, fans can sell those tickets on our platform and recover their costs. And every ticket sold on our platform is covered with a 100% industry-leading buyer guarantee. We promise a valid ticket delivered on time and as described, or your money back. If a fan has any questions or encounters any issues, we'll quickly provide a response from our 300-person call center that typically connects fans with live support in less than a minute. We're very proud that Newsweek recently named us to its list of America's best companies for customer service, ranking us #1 in the ticketing industry. And we're also proud to have been chosen as the official partner for a host of well-known teams and brands, including ESPN, the University of Colorado, the LA Clippers, the Chicago Bears, and many more. Today, Vivid Seats competes vigorously in a vibrant secondary ticket channel, which includes many of the companies represented on the panel with me today. And let me be clear, we love competition. It challenges us all to innovate and to strive to provide fans the best value. At Vivid Seats, we think of new ways to rise to this challenge every single day. The scene is different in the primary channel, where only one company wields extensive control. That kind of market power can be abused in ways that hurt fans. Fans who try to purchase tickets from the primary seller often find that sales are limited to a short on-sale period, with limited seating options typically held weeks or months in advance of the event. Fans are hurt when the primary seller restricts the transferability of tickets. As is the case with most property, a ticket belongs to the fan who holds it. They should be able to transfer that ticket on the platform of their choice. By restricting transferability, primary sellers exert even more control over the marketplace, essentially mandating that tickets become available from one source and one source only. Understanding the threat that transferability restrictions pose for consumers, states including Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, New York, Virginia, and Utah have enacted pro-consumer laws guaranteeing fans the right to resell tickets. We urge Congress to do the same. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this hearing, and Vivid Seats looks forward to working with Congress to create the best experiences possible for fans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitz. Chair now recognizes Mr. Vaccaro for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Dingell, Ranking Member Guthrie, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Don Vaccaro, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Ticket Network. I thank you for inviting me today to share information about our company and the ticketing industry. Consumers deserve fair and equitable access to live entertainment events, but face increasing difficulty in finding them. In response to the committee's questions, we have outlined a number of issues that exist and proposed remedies to fix them. They can be summarized in 3 key needs: transferability, disclosure, and freedom. When tickets go on sale, there is nothing about the process that is clear for consumers. For starters, the supposed on-sale date for the general public is far from the first day tickets are available. Pre-sales for various groups are spread throughout the ticketing process. Often, huge portions of unpurchased tickets are hidden, creating the illusion of scarcity during both pre-sales and general on-sales. Consumers' fear of missing out are triggered when in really there are thousands of additional tickets waiting to be posted. These practices deceive consumers about ticket availability and keep prices high. These held-back tickets are dripped into the regular market down the road or sold directly through secondary websites. The lack of transparency in the sales process is the biggest factor contributing to price inflation in ticketing. Clear disclosure of ticket prices and fees are hard to come by, both on the primary and secondary market. Primary sellers often apply dynamic prices that move up during periods of high demand in tandem with false scarcity of inventory. This means that very few consumers have any hope of securing tickets at the published face value. Those prices are subject to enormous undisclosed fees that draw the overwhelming majority of consumer complaints, as evidenced by submissions to the FTC in advance of their hearing on tickets in June 2019, which, according to our sample, more than 85% of the consumer's main issue was hidden fees, extra charges, and deceptive price advertising. The next largest issue was floor pricing and transferability. Some websites impose floor prices and coordinate those with sellers. Those floors artificially inflate prices and harm consumers who bought tickets and can no longer attend. FTC Commissioner Slaughter gave clear direction to ticket sellers to disclose fees up front, or the FTC would intervene. We heeded her warning. Ticket Network has never allowed floor pricing and is leading the way in developing retail websites that don't trick consumers using high and hidden fees. 99% of our retail websites, we offer consumers the option to view all-in prices, including fees, before any personal identifiable information is consumed. We also have approximately 30% of our websites charge no service fees at all to the consumer, and it's baked in, giving consumers a true, transparent solution. We believe that this model is a model for the industry. We also believe that there's no necessity for legislation for folks in this industry to do the right thing. We can do it now. But perhaps the most egregious consumer abuse are systems that restrict the availability for consumers to transfer and resell tickets while simultaneously harvesting an enormous amount of consumer data to sell to marketers and suppressing the ability of some classes of consumer from even participating in the process. In summary, there's several common sense measures that can vastly improve the customer experience: transferability, transparency, disclosure are the keys, rather than the ever-increasing concentration of market power in this industry in the hands of a few bad actors. Thankfully, there's a proposed solution out there. The BOSS Act from Representative Pallone, Pascrell, and Senator Blumenthal. On balance, it protects composition and takes vital steps for a more consumer-friendly experience. And that's something we're striving for. And just to echo, it's all about the consumers, hopefully. It's not about us. It's what's best for the consumers that's going to make this industry better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vaccaro. Now the chair recognizes Mr. Chody for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Madam Chair and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Joe Chody, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer and President of Tickets.com. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in today's hearing and contribute to the committee's efforts to improve the transparency and ensure fairness for our consumers and live event ticketing industry. Tickets.com is a technology company whose core product is the primary ticketing platform known as ProVenue. ProVenue serves as the core of a comprehensive suite of products and services that are utilized by over 250 United States client organizations to sell primary tickets, their primary tickets, on their own brand, in their own box office, and through online measures. While client organizations solely establish the policies and practices for a ticket sold through ProVenue, Tickets.com provides an array of technological features and functionality that allows venues to create events, establish ticket quantities, create and adjust pricing, list availability, and establish and display fees, all designed to enhance the patron's live event ticketing experiences that can be utilized to address consumer protection concerns identified at this morning's committee. Tickets.com is constantly striving to improve and innovate patrons live event ticketing experiences. We look forward to working with the committee towards our mutual goals. Hopefully today's panel can be a step forward in that direction. I thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions later on this morning.
Thank the gentleman. It's now time for members to ask you questions, and the chair will recognize herself for 5 minutes. Ms. Burns, the 2016 New York Attorney General report that you referenced in your testimony found that the industry's use of holdbacks and presales restrict consumers' access to tickets. In fact, for some popular concerts, an average of 54% of tickets were held back for industry insiders, fan clubs, credit card presales, artists, and other sources, according to the report. In your testimony, you said that ticket holdbacks are a major contributor to the limited number of face value tickets available to the general public. If you can tell me, Ms. Burns, very briefly, how prevalent are those holdbacks in the ticketing industry, and why should consumers care about them?
Well, the holdbacks are an issue in our industry because it limits supply.
Right, how prevalent are they?
They're prevalent. Just in terms of how prevalent, I couldn't give you a figure, but they're incredibly prevalent. It's a common practice of primary ticket issuers, but it's an issue for consumers because it limits supply.
Right.
Right, and when you have limited supply, and you have, especially for events that are high in demand, it creates a false sense of scarcity, and over time, as those tickets are trickled out, can result in higher prices for fans than if they were originally offered just all at once. It also limits access to fans who, we want to purchase those tickets, and the lack of transparency is just, an issue in the industry in general.
Thank you. Ms. Howe, from your perspective, how many of the concerts that or the events that you sell, do you have the holdbacks in the range of 54%, that type of range?
Thank you for the question, Chair Dingell. Let me clarify some misconception. I want to try to tease apart holds from pre-sales for a minute. True holds, which are effectively tickets that the artist is holding back for friends and family, VIP, and in some case promotions, are single digits. There's no incentive for the artist to want to hold that inventory back. When they're going on sale and 90% of their marketing dollars are being spent at the on sale, they want to get that inventory out there.
So you just don't agree with what the
I don't agree.
Okay.
Respectfully disagree.
I want to go back to you, Ms. Burns, because you talked about ticket transferability, and what you said in your written testimony is arguments in support of transfer restrictions was a smokescreen. Can you tell me why that you hold that, why that's your perspective?
Yes. So I believe what you may be referring to is the argument of fraud being used as a justification for limits on transferability. We believe that's a smokescreen because if you look at the incidence of fraud, it's actually quite low in the ticketing industry, especially as we move towards mobile ticketing. So it's really, the issue here is using technology really to hold consumers captive when they purchase a ticket, so that if they want to resell that ticket, they're forced to do so through the platform or the mobile system of the primary issuer.
Thank you. Ms. Howe, what's your perspective on that?
If you believe that 5 million fraudulent tickets a year is low, we would disagree with that. The issue around transferability is, let me clarify, this is a very small percentage of events that use non-transferable tickets today. When it's used, it is used for a very consumer-friendly practice, which is to get tickets into the hands of real fans at below market prices. So Pearl Jam, most recently, many of you are familiar with, is using this, and what we're seeing, if you look at those states that allow artists to restrict transfer, Pearl Jam is selling a $98 ticket, $5 charitable fee, and there's virtually no inventory on the resale market. In those two states, New York and Colorado, where they've pulled that right away from the artists, you're seeing thousands of tickets on the secondary market for $7,000.
Okay, thanks. I have just a few minutes left, and I have one more question for everybody. Do any of your businesses sell these white label tickets?
No.
engage in this? Let the record reflect everybody has, oh, Mr. Vaccaro? You got to turn your mic on.
I apologize. We had multiple different definitions of what a white label site is. I can go into it with you, but basically, we allow consumers as well as other folks here to sell tickets on a website that's branded to them.
Okay, would you agree that we need more disclosure of these sites so consumers know where they're buying their tickets?
I would answer
You
that.
just said you support this bill, the
I
process.
supported the bill, and I think
Yeah.
we have enough, and I think the disclosures comply with what the FTC said. And out of
Okay,
the-
I'm
and
out
of
of
the-
time. Thanks. Does everybody else agree? Does anybody disagree that we need more controls on these white label sites?
No.
Okay, everybody agrees. Mr. Guthrie, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the ranking member of the full committee thinking I'm too young to have seen Elvis, but that was 1975. So I have a question. So
End of his career.
it was 1975, a couple years before he passed, unfortunately. Can you briefly describe, each of you, and I only have a few minutes, so I want to make sure, so briefly is the right word, the type of business model. I know you have primary market, secondary market, white label software, et cetera. What type of market you guys operate in, and if any affiliates operate as the marketplace? I know Ticketmaster's in this category. I don't know if the others, I tell Mr. Chody might be, that you have a primary and secondary, and if you do, how those interact with each other. So, Ms. Howe? We'll
Correct.
just go
Thank
down
you
the
for the
list.
question. We have a primary market. The business model is we compete for the exclusive rights to ticket a venue, and the fees, which are shared and split with the venue, go to providing an important service, which is protecting our consumers in the marketplace and making sure we can get them in safely. We also compete in the secondary market. We are number 3 player, so we have a much smaller share of the secondary market. And we got into that because we thought it was important for us to be able to provide a safe and transparent way for consumers to buy all tickets, both primary and secondary.
Okay, Mr. Perez?
Similar to Ticketmaster, we operate in the primary segment where we're the authorized agent for the initial release of tickets for sports teams, venues, and event promoters. We also operate a resale platform that's integrated with the primary, so all tickets that are sold on our resale platform are ones that we've issued originally, so they're verified, canceled, and reissued directly to the purchaser.
Okay, Ms. Burns?
We are at our core a marketplace, so a secondary ticketing marketplace. And we have relationships with, where we're the official secondary partner for leagues, teams. We also have a primary business. It's a very small portion of our business. We've experienced challenges with trying to break into primary ticketing when we're up against a competitor that has an 80% market share.
Okay, Mr. Fitz?
We operate a resale marketplace called vividseats.com where buyers and sellers are put together to buy for tickets. We offer a wide variety, and people can compete on prices and understand what the full amount of inventory available on resource is. We also offer a technology solution called Ticket Fulfillment Services, which sells fulfillment solutions to companies that want to provide tickets to their consumers, such as Capital One, such as Groupon, American Airlines, and Caesars Entertainment.
Okay.
That also.
Thanks. So, Mr. Vaccaro, this gives you a chance to answer more of the question before, because none of that previously did the white label. So you were talking about how you have branded. White label has a lot of different definitions, doesn't necessarily mean bad. So if you have a chance to talk about your business practice in that area. If you turn the mic, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. For the armed forces, we have a website called armedforcestravel.com. So what we do is we power that engine, which is owned by the government, to give military members tickets with no service charges and no shipping fees, okay? So we're the official provider for them. We provide them that website. I was hearing about the other folks here, and anyone who wants a website, we will help them, or we would help them out with the back end, providing them fulfillment services for those websites. Each deal is different. Some people market their own websites. Some people we provide more functionality to and less. But, you know, just to be clear, I think a lot of other folks here might be more involved in white label type websites than they're properly communicating.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chody?
We're a technology company that focuses on the primary market. We provide a solution for venues to create events, create configurations for those events, establish ticket quantities, adjust and modify pricing of tickets, list availability, and establish fees and how those fees are applied.
Okay, so I'll start with you and go backwards then. So, fees, so how do you establish, who determines the fees? How do you establish the fees, and what are the fees used for?
So again, we're a technology platform, and we give the tools and the functionality to our venues to decide how and where and when they want to invoke certain pieces of functionality.
Okay, so Mr. Vaccaro, how do y'all determine fees?
On the sites that we control, we determine fees by what the others in the marketplace are charging to match the fees and displays as close to them and get a return on investment for our marketing dollars. So all the money in fees basically goes to marketing.
Okay, Mr. Fitz, I don't know if I have time to get all the way down, but we'll try.
In resale, the cost has two components: the base price, which is set by the seller and not by us, and the fee, which we assess. And the fee is used to pay for the call center I described in my opening.
And how do you determine the fees? How do y'all determine?
It's market competition, so it's subject to discipline by the market. If there's a lower price, we have to match it.
Okay. I'm out of time, but Ms. Burns, if you and that, yeah, she'll let you finish if y'all be brief, each one of you.
Okay. We are a marketplace, so sellers determine the prices of tickets. As Mr. Fitz explained, there's two components to pricing. There's the price of the ticket, and there's the fees that we charge. Because we're a marketplace, the sellers determine the price of the tickets.
If your fee's too high, people are going to use your site. Is that kind of the market determines? Mr. Perez, kind of?
Fees on our platform, both primary and resale, are set by the client, and they're usually determined by market analysis.
Sal?
Similar to Mr. Perez, fees are determined with the event organizer, and we share with us in those fees.
Thank you. I appreciate the indulgence of the chair now.
Chair now recognizes the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Plum, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm particularly concerned by the hidden fees that the ticketing industry charges American consumers at the very end of the purchase process. And we're all familiar with this. You search for a ticket online and one price is initially displayed, but when you go to check out, hefty fees are added and the final price is much higher than the original price shown. There was a 2016 report by the National Economic Council that stated, I quote, "At their worst, such fees can be fraudulent or deceptive. At a minimum, they make prices unclear, hinder effective consumer decision-making, and dull the competitive process." So let me start with Ms. Howe. In your written testimony, you stated, and I quote, "Consumers should be able to see the total cost of their tickets, including all fees, at the beginning of the purchase process, not only at the end." So let me ask you, Ms. Howe, how would providing the total ticket price at the beginning of the purchase process, as opposed to the end, benefit consumers?
Thank you for your question, Chairman Pallone. We believe that providing full disclosure of not just the face value of the ticket, but the fees will help aid a consumer in making the right decision. So instead of getting so far down the purchase path, you should know upfront what you're paying for and where those fees are going.
And how would, you further stated that requiring all live event ticketing marketplaces to move to all-in pricing would, and I quote, "prevent price manipulation, provide transparency, and protect consumers." But is it Ticketmaster's position that it would support all-in pricing?
Absolutely. We support it, but we believe it needs to be mandated and that all marketplaces need to comply.
So if, as a dominant player in the industry, if you voluntarily implemented this, I mean, you don't see that as being effective? You think it has to be mandated by law?
It's a good question. The reason we don't believe it's going to be effective is that it's confusing to consumers. Right now, you need consumers to understand apples to apples. And today, if you look at Ticketmaster and you go to another marketplace, that ticket may seem more expensive, but the other marketplaces are marking that down and putting fees as high as 40 to 50% on the back end. So they're making ill-informed decisions if you don't have apples to apples.
Okay. Now let me ask Mr. Perez, I'd like to get your views on this issue of all-in pricing. In a briefing with the committee staff, I understand you told the committee that disclosure of a ticket's full price needs to occur as early in the purchase process as possible. So why is it important to provide the full ticket price to consumers up front, and would you support a bill to mandate it?
Thank you for the question, Chairman Pallone. Because of the customer confusion between the primary and the resale market, they are price shopping across for the same ticket inventory across multiple websites And it's our belief that with legislation that requires all of us to show the fees all in up front, then people will be able to make informed decisions on the value and the cost of the ticket that they're purchasing.
Okay. And then let me finally ask Ms. Burns, I understand that StubHub implemented all-in pricing from 2014 to 15, but ultimately moved away from that model. Why did StubHub move away from all-in pricing, and do you believe StubHub's experience would have been different if other players in the industry had followed your lead?
Yeah, and I just want to make one clarification.
Sure.
We actually do show all-in pricing on our site today, and we allow it through search as well as ticket listing pages. Consumers have an optional view to search based on all-in pricing, so we leave it to the consumer, which we think is the right thing to do. But to answer your question, the reason why we moved away from it is because it was confusing for consumers when we were offering all-in pricing and other ticketers were not, because consumers just didn't understand that they were viewing prices that were inclusive of fees. They thought they were viewing prices that were exclusive of fees. So for all-in pricing to work, we believe there needs to be clear guidelines, clear requirements on what constitutes all-in pricing, as well as universal and consistent enforcement.
Okay. Well, I think it's critically important that consumers have complete information about how much they're going to spend on tickets at the beginning, not at the end. I think all three of you agree. So going forward, I hope the industry will cooperate with us in our efforts to put the consumer first. And all of you said that you would support a mandate. And Ms. Burns, I appreciate your adding that we have to be specific about what that means, because I think that's important too. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank the gentleman. Chair now recognizes Mr. Walden for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got a question for all the witnesses, and it is who makes the decision as to whether or not tickets are transferable? Sal, can we just start with you? And
Sure, thank you for that question. The event organizer is making that decision, so it's the artist, the sports team, the Broadway producer.
does everyone agree with that, Ms. Perez?
In our experience, it's the artists themselves. It's not even the event organizer. We've never issued non-transferable tickets that weren't the direct request of an artist.
All right, Ms. Burns, anybody disagree with this notion?
I have a disagreement, actually. I think what's important in asking the question about transferability is the ticket transferable on any platform or transferable only within the platform of the primary issuer? I think there's a key distinction there. In the latter case, the primary issuer is actually making the choice to make that ticket non-transferable. Meaning if it can only be sold on that primary issuer's platform, then they are making the choice that it's non-transferable.
How do you want to
Can I
respond
clarify
to
that?
Yeah, sure.
That's not accurate. For a couple things. One is there are very few cases where transfer is restricted. We don't
would
make
those
that
be?
decision. We don't make that decision. There's only been a few since, and I just wanted to correct the record from the opening statement. SafeTix does not equal non-transferable tickets. So yes, we have invested in digital tickets, but we've invested in that because we want to shut down the fraudulent ticket market. It does have the capability to restrict transfer. It has only been used in a couple of situations, Pearl Jam most recently, which I mentioned earlier, and just on this Monday, we ticketed the Kobe Bryant Memorial Service. And his wishes were to make sure that, his family's wishes were to get those tickets well below face market prices and do that in a way that didn't create a secondary market. All of that money went to charities. So there are situations where restricted transfer is great for the consumer, and it's great for the content owner.
All right, anybody else want to weigh in?
Yeah, I just interject that Connecticut has a very pro-consumer law, and it's the venue that ultimately has responsibility for the transfer of the ticket. So the venue is the bad actor if you can't transfer the ticket, not the promoter or anything. And Connecticut's law requires that you be able to transfer the ticket without giving any personally identifiable information to the venue to transfer the ticket, regardless if the venue is located in Connecticut or out of state.
All right. Mr. Fitz, you want to weigh in on
Yes,
that?
thank you. Transferability means competition, right? So marketplaces should have to compete with one another for that ticket on the resale marketplace. A ticket that's transferable means that different marketplaces can offer it and compete about services, compete over fees. The danger with Safe Ticket, which sounds like a nice product, but it has dangers that eventually that becomes a walled garden for only Ticketmaster to operate. That's the danger here, and that's why we need the BOSS Act to protect transferability.
Do any of you oppose electronic ticketing? This is a consumer, I kind of like that.
The only thing I oppose is when you mandate it, For example, with the CCPA, it was mandated that, look, you need a mobile phone, you need an app.
Right.
People came out that it was disenfranchising for people who didn't have it. Plus, a lot of the primaries came out that they gathered so much information from you, including your gender or change in gender, and they sold that information to marketers to help you market that. They gave you IP addresses of your customers. It's very much a concern with the military members. They also put in devices on
Now,
those
who was
phones to
doing
track your
this?
location.
Who is doing this?
Both Access and Ticketmaster.
Do you want to respond to
So
that?
let me just clarify. Ticketmaster is not mandating the use of digital tickets. It's our
Right.
job to create the
an option.
technology. And let me give you some numbers. For the NFL, which was the first league to use safe ticks and digital ticketing at scale, there's some teams that have 95% digital tickets, and there's some that have 25%. That is a team decision. That's not a Ticketmaster decision.
Okay. What about the information gathering and sale piece that he referenced?
Sorry, can you?
Everything from gender to IP addresses.
I can supply you all the documentation. I gave it to your committee, your staff members. It was on their website. It all came apart because of the California Consumer Protection
Right.
Act, Privacy Act, and they're saying, what information do you disclose? And the amount of information, if you want to transfer a ticket, is enormous. So you as a consumer, before you even buy a ticket, you pay a cost if you want to do mobile only and non-transferable. You have to give them so much information that they in turn sell to market.
I just want her to be able to have, and I'm out of time, but can you just?
Sorry, that's not accurate. At least for Ticketmaster, I can't speak for other platforms. The only information you're providing is your name, your phone number, and your email address to be able to receive transfer. And we cannot do anything with that data. The only thing we can do is troubleshoot and fulfill that ticket. We can't market. So that's at least how we do it on our platform.
Thank you for letting me answer, Madam Chair. Thanks.
Okay, gentlemen's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the chair of the Consumer Protection Subcommittee that will be considering the BOSS Act, Ms. Schakowsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Consumers continue to be negatively affected by practices occurring in the ticketing marketplace, and many of the practices have been well documented. Some of you have mentioned some of the concerns and have gone on for quite a while. I just want to go down the road and ask each of you, just yes or no, do you believe that we need more legislation to adequately protect consumers? Ms. Howe, I'll begin with you.
Absolutely, we do.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yes, or enforcement of the current laws.
Without question.
Or and?
Or.
Without question.
So I think there's pretty much agreement here that we need to do something, and the plan is that we will. So now I want to hear firsthand from those in the industry about harms that impact consumers. Let me just ask, what do you believe are the most significant anti-consumer practices that are taking place in the industry? I don't have a lot of time, so again, I'd like to go down the road, beginning with you, Ms. Howe. Your company, Ticketmaster, is the largest primary seller of tickets. You begin. What do you think?
We're concerned about bots. 30 billion bots blocked a year is preventing consumers from getting access. We're concerned with speculative ticketing, deceptive websites, and the lack of proper resale disclosures for consumers.
Thank you. Mr. Paris.
Bots, for sure, and deceptive websites and speculative ticketing.
Ms. Burns.
I think ticket transferability reigns supreme. So anything that disables ticket transferability or anything that limits ticket transferability to a specific platform, that's harmful to consumers because it limits choice.
Thank you. Mr. Fitz.
Ticket transferability is the key issue facing the industry today. That's why states like Colorado have passed laws requiring the tickets to be transferable. It's necessary for the consumer to be able to compete, to be able to see others compete for that ticket.
Thank you. Mr. Vaccaro.
Ticket transferability, data sharing, and floor pricing.
So you're the only one that has really raised the privacy issue, I think?
I think there's a lot of consumers who aren't aware of what came out, and there were articles with it. A lot of reasons why the other folks don't raise it is some of the other folks, is part of their thing, they actively sell all that data. And contrary to what they said, I gave your staff the links.
Okay.
It says we market to this, we sell your gender, they put it right in there, your IP.
I heard that before. Thank you.
And-
Okay, and
okay.
Mr. Choti?
Bots, deceptive websites, in data sharing and utilization. Our model is different than most models in the marketplace today, where our client, our venue's data is their data, and we don't share that with any third party or ourselves.
Great. I'm going to ask Ms. Howe and Ms. Burns, but others, if there's time, can respond. The FTC has a role to play or could play. And so I wanted to just ask you what the FTC has also held a workshop, and what you think that the Federal Trade Commission can do to protect consumers.
Thank you for the question. Most important thing is to enforce the 2016 BOTS Act. It is an arms race. We invest a lot of money, but without stronger enforcement, it's going to be very difficult to fundamentally solve that problem.
Ms. Burns? FTC.
Yeah, I agree. With regard to the BOTS Act, which StubHub was a strong supporter of, that more can be done with enforcement, and believe that's in cooperation between Congress, the FTC, and DOJ. Also believe the FTC can do more to support maintain competition, healthy competition within ticketing, and has enforcement authority there as well.
Okay, anybody else that wants to just briefly comment on the role of the regulator, the Federal Trade Commissioner, Mr. Fitz?
If I may, the FTC should also be concerned about holdbacks and that practice, and they should take a look at that perhaps, but also transferability and the ways that tickets are exchanged between exchanges.
Thank you.
I would just adding to that, I would say that Commissioner Slaughter from the FTC made one mandate. She either said, people in this industry, either you fix the hidden prices or the FTC will find a solution for you. That was the main mandate. I think we did it. I believe that StubHub did it with the toggle. So now we have some players, other ones haven't.
Thank you. My time is up, and I yield back. Thank you.
I think the gentlelady chair now recognizes Mr. Burgess for 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I actually want to go back to something that Ranking Member Walden was talking about, and that is the issue on the issuing of digital tickets and moving to all digital tickets. And then how does the non-digital individual interface with the ticket selling world? Mr. Fitz and Ms. Burns, maybe you can address that. Going to everyone has to buy their ticket on a smartphone. There are still people out there who don't have the technology.
I'll take that. Yeah, I mean, the problem with requiring a smartphone is it does eliminate individuals who don't have a smartphone from attending events. I think without a paper option that could foreclose people from attending, I think digital tickets could be a positive, but again, there's a danger that transferability is shut off simply with a flip of a switch, and then you have a closed garden, a walled garden, and people aren't able to compete.
Ms. Burns?
I agree with that. I don't have anything to add there.
So Ms. Howe, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, let me just clarify. With digital tickets, there's always an option for a fan to get a paper ticket at the box office. So if they don't have a smartphone, they can always work with customer service, and they can get that at the box office.
Yeah, but then they got to stand in line in the cold outside the ticket window, right? They should do it with a smartphone. Okay. Mr. Vaccaro, you brought up an interesting point about the collection of digital data, and you brought up the California law and state law on privacy and how that is now beginning to impact, I guess for all of you, impact your business. Have you had any difficulty meeting the demands in the European side of things with the GDPR? Has that surfaced as an issue for any of you?
We comply with them. It was an issue, it was a cost to us. I think ultimately consumers will benefit from it. And I think consumers are much more wary now about their data and what's it used for. So as far as us, we comply with it, we did it. It was expensive, but we did it.
Has anyone found difficulty with complying with either the California law or the GDPR? Yes, sir, Mr. Perez.
No, in fact, GDPR set up very well for compliance with the California law. And just for the record, we do not sell data to anyone. We provide the data to our venues so they can service all fans when they show up at the event, regardless of where they purchased the ticket. It's an ability to provide customer service. With paper tickets and PDF tickets, we have no idea who these people are, where they got the tickets, and we cannot help them. And that really pains us.
Let me just ask you a question, because privacy is going to be something that that the Energy and Commerce Committee writ large is going to have to deal with. Does anyone have any thoughts and advice that you would give the committee when we're dealing with how to reconcile what's happening in California with the rest of the country as a national standard, something that to which we should aspire?
I would say a national standard would make it much simpler on businesses, that you don't have to comply with 50 state laws on privacy. And there's an argument to be made that California's law gives an advantage over California businesses rather than out-of-state businesses because the way they apply the law. But yes, you're right, a national standard, much easier for businesses to comply with rather than dealing with 50 different states.
Yeah, it's always been my thesis that the founders, when they wrote the Constitution, the Commerce Clause was written with the idea that eventually we'll get to a world of e-commerce where we want to be able to sell things across the several states without boundaries. Yes, Mr. Fitz.
I think, though, there's a privacy issue here in our industry, and that's a practice sometimes engaged in by primary marketplaces where if a ticket is sold on my marketplace, it's digital, they require my customer to log into their marketplace to download the ticket. That creates a relationship that my customer didn't intend, and it's the forced transfer of PII. So I think that's concerning, and I'd look to the BOSS Act to address that.
And you think it would be addressed in the BOSS Act?
I think the language on that point could be a little stronger, but I think that I see that as friction to transferability that exists right now that should be eliminated.
All right, very well. I'll yield back then, Chair.
Thank the gentleman. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Ruiz.
Thank you, and thank you to the witnesses that are here today. One of the primary economic drivers in my district is tourism. It's Palm Springs, California, Coachella Valley. People who fly into Palm Springs from around the country often will buy tickets to shows or concerts during their time in the Coachella Valley. Many of you may have heard of the Coachella and Stagecoach festivals that attract hundreds of thousands of people each year. Starting next year, tourists will have a new attraction, an AHL hockey team based in Palm Springs. When people visit my district for these events, they spend money at our local businesses and patronize our hotels and restaurants. I want to be sure that their experience is a good one, and that starts with the ticket buying process. One practice that is particularly concerning to me is the use of deceptive white label websites. These ticketing websites deceive consumers into believing the websites are affiliated with a venue, team, or artist, when in fact, no such affiliation exists. Ms. Howe, in your testimony, you contended that, quote, some secondary marketplaces routinely use or work with these deceptive websites, unquote. How prevalent are deceptive white label websites, and how are they harming consumers?
Thank you for the question. Last year alone, we worked with Google and other ISPs to shut down over 30 of these deceptive websites. And it's incredibly misleading. They're posing as official websites of the venue, the artist, the team, and you're pushing a consumer to a secondary site. Oftentimes it has.
How prevalent are they?
I don't know the exact number, but I do know.
How would you say they harm consumers?
They're resale sites. So when you're pushing a consumer thinks they're buying from an official box office, an official team site, and you're posing as
they cost more.
resale site, it costs more, absolutely.
Mr. Vaccaro, the FTC brought an action against your company in 2014 alleging that it licensed tools and services to clients who created websites that misrepresented affiliations with certain venues. For example, the FTC alleged that a ticket network client created a web page that appeared to be affiliated with Radio City Music Hall. According to the FTC's complaint, the client advertised the site as the, quote, official ticket source online, unquote, for Radio City Music Hall tickets, even though the website had no affiliation with the venue. Mr. Vaccaro, your written testimony noted that Ticket Network entered into a consent decree with the FTC that contains, quote, clear and concise rules, unquote, on how to operate white label websites that are not deceptive. Mr. Vaccaro, what are you doing to ensure that Ticket Network's clients do not create websites that misrepresent an affiliation with a venue?
Thank you. That's great. The first thing we do is the FTC laid out some pretty clear and concise rules to follow. Don't use the word official. How
are you implementing those recommendations?
We told any websites who buy that from us not to do it.
Do you follow up and check with them?
We follow up as much as we can, but we also have affiliates.
As much as you can, what does that mean? You don't, or you do?
We do follow up. I don't know the exact answer of the procedure of how we follow up or how we review each of them, but I can get back to you on that.
I think that'll be important because that's what this whole topic is about. Mr. Fitz, I understand that your company also licenses tools and services to third-party ticketing websites. In your testimony, you described how Vivid Seats screens potential licenses and requires them to comply with the FTC's consent decree with Ticket Network. Mr. Fitz, given these precautions, are you certain that your licensees are not engaged in deceptive white label practices? You gotta turn it on.
We agree that false impressions left with consumers about affiliation that does not exist.
So how certain so you're pretty certain that your licensees are not engaged in these deceptive white label practices?
Exactly. Our licensees do not deceive anybody.
Ms. Burns, do you believe the FTC is sufficiently deterring companies from engaging in deceptive white label practices, or do you think more needs to be done?
I think the FTC has done a good job of working with industry to crack down on white label sites. However, I think more can be done.
Like what?
Consistent policing, working with industry to identify them, and taking swift action.
Great. Mr. Chody, same question. Do you believe the FTC is sufficiently deterring companies from engaging in deceptive white label practices, or do you think more needs to be done? Thank you. I yield back.
I'm sorry about that. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In preparing for this hearing, Mr. Perez, my team had me visit ticketflipping.com, not something I would ordinarily do. But this is a website that sells training materials to help people become ticket brokers. On the site, they sell a plug-in that gives a ticket broker the ability to know how many tickets are available for AXS, your company, events, and specific data about remaining tickets. It seems to me that this information must be pretty valuable to brokers if they are designing plug-ins to monitor sale rates on your website. What is the value of this information? And in your opinion, is there a benefit to disclosure of this information by venues?
In my opinion, there's no benefit of this disclosure to the consumer. I think that the brokers that are using that information are trying to gauge supply and demand so they can maximize profits. And what we're seeing now, when we talk about inventory disclosures, many of us on the panel today have moved to seat maps where we fully disclose all the seats available in a seat map. Almost instantly, we saw when we did that, people scraping every single listing in our site, recreating a site that does not own any of those tickets at a higher price, and when they close that transaction at a higher price, would come to our website and purchase the actual ticket. In our minds, that's complete and total deception and fraud. And so we're concerned that providing the bad actor and broker community a roadmap with how to maximize profits is going to harm consumers.
Well, what if you don't give them the actual seats, but you just tell them how many is available? In other words, you know, we still have 3,842 seats left. Does because
so
as a
we've seen
consumer,
another-
I would like to see that information too, because if I'm trying to decide whether I want to buy now or wait till later, I'm not sure I can attend. That would help me decide whether I'm buying today or buying next week.
Yeah, correct. The other thing that we've seen is as inventory gets low, there are a number of entities out there that overnight come in and scoop up all the tickets. So you'd be selling 10, 20 tickets a day, and then in one night, you'd sell 200 tickets, the show would be sold out. One entity would try and control those tickets and now artificially raise the resale market. So again, we have the same concern in that particular situation. I think what is probably easier to accomplish and more palatable for everybody is the total number of tickets at the outset. And that, we talked about it earlier for sports teams, we know how many seats are in the venue. For concerts, we know roughly how many seats are going to be available, subject to production realities.
Do you all have the capability to monitor when somebody is selling the tickets for an upscale? And I think, Ms. Howe, you mentioned earlier some price that was going on in Colorado. Can you all monitor what the increase in the price is over what it was on the face value of the ticket? You can go ahead, either one of you.
But we try. There's so many websites out there that it's almost impossible to monitor every single one of them.
All right.
That's right.
All right. Now, Ms. Howe, in ticketing, it seems consumer complaints hit a peak when they are unable to access tickets. How often, I think it would help the committee, how often do you have sellout events? How often does the demand exceed the supply?
Thank you for the question. So if you look at last year, there were about 60,000 music events. Only 30% of those sold out. And if you look at the number that sold out within the first 24 hours, it was about 2.5%. So there's very, very high demand events, but it's a relatively small percentage of the events.
And can you explain to us what technologies your company's using to try to develop to reduce the presence of bots when you're selling tickets to these events that are expected to be high demand events?
Absolutely. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, we're blocking 3 billion bots a month, and this year we expect to block close to 30 billion. We are doing a number of things. We're leveraging state-of-the-art technology to block bots on the perimeter of our marketplace, but we're also investing in smart, innovative products that are letting fans get to the front of the line in front of both bots and professional brokers, so we're giving them fair access.
In those events, if people are willing to pay a higher price, why not have the face value be higher as well in the first place? And wouldn't that benefit the artist more?
It's a great question, and we have a terrific product that we've launched a few years ago. It's a platinum product, which effectively allows the artist to do exactly that. So for those best seats in the house, if the artist wants to recapture that value instead of it going to a middleman, they're able to do that effectively.
All right, I appreciate it, and I yield back. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from New Hampshire for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I appreciate all of you being here for this hearing today. I want to get back to the transferability question. I was just poised to do it when my colleague reclaimed his time. But Mr. Fitz, proponents of placing restrictions on ticket transferability have argued that those restrictions help keep ticket prices low. But in your testimony, you argued that transferability restrictions, quote, would leave fans with fewer choices and higher prices. Do you think that proponents of transferability restrictions truly believe that these restrictions keep prices lower for consumers, or is there something more nefarious underlining this position?
I wouldn't necessarily characterize their testimony, but I would say that transferability leads to competition. And so when a ticket is transferable, multiple marketplaces need to compete over it. And so that means doing things like having 100% buyer guarantee, a call center available at extended hours. They have to compete for those issues. They also need to compete on price, of course, because if a fee is too high in one market, it won't sell. So Transferability breeds competition. The danger with a lack of transferability is it cuts it off and restricts it to one player.
Which would result in higher prices for consumers, presumably,
Well, presumably, it could lead to higher prices and lower service levels.
and lower service, okay. Ms. Burns, beyond controlling ticket prices, proponents of non-transferable tickets also contend these restrictions enhance event security and limit fraud. But in your testimony, you called these arguments, quote, "a smokescreen designed to limit consumer choice." How prevalent is fraud in the secondary ticket marketplace, and why do you think concerns about fraud are a smokescreen or a bogus argument?
I can't speak to numbers for the entire industry. I just know what the numbers are for StubHub, and I can tell you they're incredibly low. Far less than 0.5% of tickets subject to fraud on our site. So we believe it's a smokescreen as justification to hold a consumer captive, again, with a primary ticketer who also has a secondary platform if they want to transfer that ticket within their platform. Again, I think it's important to distinguish between, is the ticket non-transferable or is it non-transferable outside the primary issuer's platform? But I think it's a smokescreen because the primary issuer doesn't do any background check on the buyer, right? Nor do they even know who that buyer may be taking to an event as their guest. They could be taking multiple people, and their identity is unknown. So again, that's why I think it's an excuse and it's not a valid justification.
Thank you. In addition to outright transfer prohibition, some ticket issuers permit resale, but only through certain processes. In its response to the committee, StubHub stated, Ticketmaster is increasingly requiring consumers who buy resale tickets on non-Ticketmaster sites like StubHub to complete their purchase through Ticketmaster's website or app. Do you think this is a genuine privacy issue, or again, do you think this workaround is just to capture your customer? What do you think the purpose of that is? And then we'll let others respond.
Yeah, I think it's an anti-competitive issue, but it raises a privacy issue in the process, right? Because the consumer who purchases their ticket off StubHub or any other platform, when Ticketmaster is the primary issuer, that consumer has to go through StubHub in order to receive their, or sorry, through Ticketmaster in order to receive their ticket. And in that process, they download their app, they register an account, hand over their personal data. Yet at the time of the purchase, they may have had no intention of doing any business of any sort with Ticketmaster.
And can I just guess as a consumer that then they get a flood of emails marketing to them from both StubHub and now Ticketmaster as well?
You would have to ask that question of my colleague here.
Anyone want to comment from Ticketmaster?
I'm happy to comment.
Sure.
When a ticket is, if a digital ticket is bought on another platform and fulfilled within Ticketmaster, we have no rights to market to that consumer. The only information we can use is to fulfill that ticket, and if there are issues, customer service issues, that's how we use that information. We cannot market to that consumer. We cannot sell that data.
What's the information that you require at that second step?
Name, phone number, email address.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to the panel. I'm proud of all of the work my home state of New York has done to address consumer harms in the ticketing industry. A 2016 report by the New York Attorney General found that brokers use illegal bots to seize large blocks of tickets. And I'm proud to have helped pass the Bots Act in 2016, which made the use of ticket bots illegal. However, several of our witnesses' responses have indicated that bots still exist in the marketplace, so we must keep working to ensure illegal bots are not stealing tickets away from the public. But in addition to bots, that report also found that consumers often lack access to tickets because many tickets are put on hold for industry insiders and pre-sale events. So, Mr. Fitz, your response to the committee stated that, and I quote, perceived scarcity at the on-sale is not caused by bots. It is primarily caused by holdbacks engineered by the ticketing company that operates the on-sale process, close quote. Mr. Fitz, how serious of a problem are holdbacks, and why should consumers care about this practice?
Well, holdbacks are a concern for consumers because the consumer's asked to make a decision in a high-pressure situation on sale for a concert where they don't have full information. It's a very different thought if there's 80 tickets left versus 8,000. So that's holding back a key piece of information from the consumer that they could really use. And so when the report is sold out, the consumer might not understand that there's more tickets coming later, and they may have paid a different price, but the sellout may not be legitimate.
But we're hearing that some of that that holdbacks might be a vast minority of the tickets that go for sale. Is that true? I mean, the report also indicated that it might be as high as 50%.
Yeah, I know that I've seen media coverage like the Toronto Star, for example, that showed something much more extensive than a small percentage. So based on that report, I disagree.
Ms. Burns, one way to address holdbacks is to increase transparency around ticket availability. In your testimony, you stated that this information will, and I quote, create a clearer picture of event accessibility and help to inform fans' decisions on if and when to buy tickets. How would increasing transparency around ticket availability help consumers?
Because you would know how many tickets are available at the event, and it may inform your decision as to whether purchase at the on sale or to wait.
Thank you. And Ms. Burns, some have argued against disclosing information on ticket availability. For instance, Ticketmaster contends that disclosing this information would benefit brokers and bots by, again quoting, making it easier for them to target supply and manipulate the market. So, Ms. Burns, do you buy this argument, or do you believe that we should err on the side of more disclosure?
No, I think the argument is disingenuous in that, the purpose of the holdback is, again, to create a scarcity of supply. So, and as tickets are trickled out over time, again, it's designed to maintain prices or potentially increase prices as you near the event.
Thank you. Mr. Vaccaro, you wrote in an op-ed in 2016 entitled More Transparency in Ticket Sales and No More Bots. In that piece, you argued in favor of disclosing ticket availability and stated, and I quote, if consumers knew the truth, they would no longer be fans. So why should there be more transparency surrounding ticket availability, and what types of disclosures would be most helpful for consumers?
So I'm not an economist and I don't pretend to be, but I know that when I speak to them, they say many industries do a similar thing. They create a scarcity of supply, which effectively moves the supply curve to the left, which raises the equilibrium price. All right, so when a lot of monopolies do that, a lot of other people do that by creating that scarcity of supply. And when you do those multiple pre-sales, you only see a few amount of tickets. A lot of people don't even realize how many people are in the pre-sales. So you manipulate consumers to think there's a scarcity. They buy at higher numbers. That's why over time, ticket prices are going down. They're not going up.
And with the holdbacks issue, is it as large a number of tickets as some have reported, or is it a very slight number? Can it reach 50%?
I would say it could. Well, let me clarify that because I think it's an important distinction to make. In most sports teams, they disclose the amount of tickets. All right. The real issue that we're really talking about here is more or less concerts. Okay. So in concerts, it is amazing not only how many tickets they hold back, but there's also venues that have unmanifested seats that they sell that aren't even available to the public, that are unmanifested. So the holdback number is even higher than what insiders report because they don't even count the non-manifested tickets as tickets that are going on sale.
So it can approach 50%?
Yes.
Thank you very much. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Clark, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, Ranking Member, for this convening this very important hearing. I want to thank our witnesses as well for your testimony and testifying here today. In my district in Brooklyn, New York, I have both the Barclays Center and the historic King's Theater, which draws crowds from across the borough, city, and tri-state area. Whether people are taking their families to see a Nets game or a concert, it is very important to me that the consumers are protected against harmful practices which have filled the marketplace for far too long. Having said that, I want to circle back to an issue that was mentioned earlier, Ms. Howe. Can you please clarify something you said for me? And that is, I'm trying to determine on what you do with consumer data you receive from customers who buy tickets on other platforms like StubHub, and what is it that you cannot do with that data?
Thank you for the question. The only information we receive is the consumer's name, email, and phone number. And the only thing we can do that is fulfill the ticket. And if there's an issue fulfilling that, we use it for customer services.
So
all consumers have to opt in for marketing purposes. That's regardless of what platform they're buying on.
So there's nothing that you can't do outside of just basically obtaining the data. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that we cannot use any information that is acquired from another platform for any marketing purposes, correct?
Okay, very well. Well, according to a 2018 article in the New York Times, Live Nation operates more than 200 venues worldwide, promotes more than 30,000 shows around the world, and manages over 500 artists. At the same time, Ticketmaster, which merged with Live Nation in 2010, handles tickets for 80 of the top 100 arenas in the country and sold more than 500 million tickets in 2018. After the merger between Live Nation and Ticketmaster, Live Nation is arguably the most powerful company in the entertainment industry. In fact, an article in The Economist called Live Nation a, quote, vertically integrated behemoth, end quote. The New York Times article I quoted from above also contained alarming claims about how Live Nation is wielding its market power. Mr. Perez, according to the article, Live Nation threatened to bypass shows at venues managed by your company unless the venue used Ticketmaster as the ticketer for the venue. To your knowledge, has Live Nation ever threatened to retaliate against a venue if it doesn't use Ticketmaster as its platform, Mr. Perez?
I have not heard it. The threat has not been made to me personally. I do know people that have had comments made to them.
Ms. Howe, are you aware of any instances where Live Nation or any of its affiliates threatened to bypass a venue unless Ticketmaster was used as the primary ticketing platform?
I'm not aware of any. You're referring to, as many of you know, we just agreed to extend the consent decree with the DOJ, and we believe that that will take this issue off the table. We will compete on our own innovation and our own right, not because of content.
Okay, in response to the New York Times article, Ticketmaster's president stated that its industry, quote, is not the result of any unfair advantages resulting from being a part of the Live Nation entertainment, end quote. Ms. Burns, in your testimony, you stated that in recent years, StubHub's mission has been, quote, complicated by various anti-competitive, anti-consumer practices in the ticketing industry, end quote. How does Ticketmaster's dominance contribute to the anti-competitive and anti-consumer practices in the industry?
I wish we had more time than we do to discuss this. But we have had reports to us of experiences of retaliation if StubHub was used as the ticketing partner. But what's important to understand is, Ticketmaster, in maintaining its dominance, there's three things really. They're 80% of primary ticketing share. They operate or control 80 of the top 100 venues in this country. And they are, Live Nation, their parent, is the promoter for over 400 artists. So when you have that kind of control over the industry, it is very difficult once you start and do business with them to ever exit this ecosystem, is how referred to, an ecosystem that Ticketmaster's created. That's exactly it. They've created this ecosystem that is very difficult to leave. And so as a result, it is hard we have had experience in trying to enter the primary ticketing segment and have experienced difficulty as a result of, this dominance in the market.
Very well. Yield back. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Peters, for 5 minutes.
Maybe just to follow up, is it, so I've heard some discussion of whether tickets should be transferable. It's obviously a big issue. Is it ever appropriate to hold back any tickets from being transferable or to do kind of the off the manifest kind of things? Is that something that is ever appropriate, Mr. Perez?
I'll give you a specific example. In the state of Colorado, there's a venue that we ticket, Red Rocks, and the first row of that very iconic venue is reserved for ADA seating.
Right.
And because of laws, we're unable to verify people's disabilities. And as part of a consent decree with Denver Arts and Venues and some advocacy groups, we're actually able to make those tickets non-transferable to have a greater influence over those tickets being resold and making sure that the people with disabilities were the ones that were actually using it.
How about if the venue or the band wants to hold back tickets for itself? Is that something that could be non-transferable? Is it ever appropriate for that to be non-transferable? So,
There are holds, and then there is the issue of should that ticket be non-transferable. Artists can hold back inventory for important purposes.
I've seen Mr. Vaccaro seem to be objecting to that kind of practice. Is that true, or
Well, just for clarity's sake.
is that a transparency issue?
I think that as far as holdbacks, that bands and artists should be able to hold back whatever tickets they want, just as long as they disclose them to the public. So as far as holdbacks, it's that. I think the problem with transferability is it gets to a slippery slope on what can be transferred or not. And classic examples, Ed Sheeran said his tickets aren't transferable. Nobody can make it to the show. The tickets were selling for less than face value. Even though he had a face value exchange, he wouldn't let consumers transfer them. And especially when you get to transferability.
Well, I understand that, but I'm sort of thinking there's a difference between 100% non-transferable and 5% non-transferable.
I agree with you. I think you're correct. It's a huge distinction.
Is that something? Is that a line that you think Congress could draw in an effective way?
I think it would be very difficult to do unless it was very tightly written so that people couldn't use that to advance their, let's say, monopoly on tickets. That's the problem.
Okay. Maybe a question for Ms. Howe. Ms. Burns was pointing out how many venues you own in our district: House of Blues, the Padres, Humphreys, the Civic Center. So these venues have experienced this kind of fraud, and they seem to have little recourse against brokers and platforms that engage in this deceptive behavior. What are the remedies, and what suggestions do you have for us to address this kind of problem?
Thank you for the question. A couple things. One is, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we're fighting bots every month and every day. We'll block 3 billion every month, 30 billion this year. But more importantly, we need to figure out how to change the conditions at the on-sale. So we're investing in products like Verified Fan and Smart Queue that allow real fans to actually get those tickets instead of brokers and secondary markets. We're also investing in digital technology that shuts that fraudulent ticket market down. So instead of the anonymous barcode that can be, you can take a screenshot and send it to somebody else and it's a fraudulent ticket, that digital ticket is now tied to your identity.
Ms. Burns, you had you're making an anti-competitive argument. Does this kind of vertical integration for security make the challenge more difficult for you?
Absolutely. They control the supply chain end to end, starting with the artists, the venue.
So given the concern about security, how would you suggest we draw the line between primary and secondary?
I'm not sure if I'm tracking the question.
So Ms. Howe's made an argument that because she's issuing the tickets, she has a way to make sure that they're followed kind of through the course of the transfer. That, again, seems to root transferability into the same concern you had before.
And I think it's possible to use technology. We should explore the use of technology in order to track the ticket,
right.
Prevent fraud. Where we take issue is how Ticketmaster is doing it and through the use of safe technology is not for that purpose. We don't think it's, for the legitimate purpose of cracking down on fraud. Because again, remember, they don't do any sort of background check on the individual. They don't know who else is going. In terms of, tracking those issues, it's just not used for that purpose.
You think they're two different issues? Okay. My time has expired, but I appreciate all the witnesses being here and look forward to working on this. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and I'm very pleased to recognize gentleman from Texas, Mr. Flores, who's not a member of this subcommittee, but we're always happy to have you here. And now you're recognized for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions for Ms. Burns of StubHub. Let me give you the background first. There are situations where a customer buys a ticket from an event sponsor, and then later on they decide they can't use that ticket, and then they use your platform to resell the ticket because of an arrangement that you have with the original ticket, the original event sponsor. And there is a fee charged for that resale in the form of a reduction amount of proceeds that are received by the ticket seller. So how much is that fee?
The fee that's charged the seller, so there's no fee charged the seller to actually list on our site. There's a fee that's charged on the sell, and it depends on who the seller is.
Okay. And then how is that fee set?
Well, again, the fee is set based on who the seller is. So we have agreements with our sellers, and so.
Yeah, but the seller is the customer. Are you talking about the event sponsor is the seller in this case? So let's say I buy a ticket and I pay full price for it from the event sponsor.
Yep.
And StubHub's never been part of the transaction. And then because if I want to resell it, the only way I can resell it is because of some arrangement that the event sponsor has with StubHub. I sell the ticket, and then there's this big discount taken, this big fee that's taken off, and then I get the net proceeds. So who sets that fee?
Who sets the fee is StubHub sets the fee with that seller.
Okay. And then does the original event sponsor receive part of that fee?
I don't know.
Okay. Would you supplementally respond to that for us and let us know? And if yes, why does the original event sponsor receive part of the fee for something they've already received full value for, is the question. And then the next question is there any disclosure to the customer that part of that fee is going back to the original event sponsor that the customer bought the ticket from?
Okay, we'll follow up with you.
You get back with us on that?
Yeah, happy to do that.
And if there isn't any disclosure, if not, why not? Doesn't the customer deserve to see what that is? And then the last question would be, what value to the customer is there for paying an additional fee back to the event sponsor?
I just want to make something clear. As it relates to fees, we are fully transparent as to fees that are charged to the customer on our site. Right? The customer knows throughout the search and the sale and the sale and the checkout process what fees they are being charged. At no point when they purchase a ticket do they not know what fees they will be charged at the time of payment.
And I'm not saying there's no transparency in terms of the amount of the fee. Is this a 15% fee for a $100 ticket seems pretty expensive when particularly if the original event sponsor is getting part of that fee. There's getting some sort of a kickback for part of that fee. So we need to figure that out because I've noticed in some situations the fee was 10% one year and then the very next year is 15%. So we need to figure out why did the amount of the fee go up 50% in 1 year? And then one just sort of an editorial comment for all of you in this space, and that is that there's, as you've heard from, I think, most everybody that's testified or asked questions, there's a lot of customer angst about what happens in this space. And I think it would behoove all of you that when you're designing your processes, your policies and pricing and procedures, that put yourself in the customer's shoes, look at it through the customer's eyes. And I think if you do that, you wouldn't be in front of this panel today. So thank you. I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman. Chair I just have one more question to clarify. Ms. Howe, you had said several times that Ticketmaster, when it takes the data, it takes the name, the email address, and the phone number of the purchaser. Is that right?
Correct.
And that it doesn't resell, or it doesn't market to those people?
We are not only, if a consumer opts in, do we have the right to market to them.
Okay. What about if a person is trying to purchase the ticket on one of the reselling platforms like StubHub? Is Ticketmaster's policy the same way if they opt in?
Correct. They opt in, and it's even more restrictive if it's bought on another platform. In other words, we can only use that information to fulfill the ticket and provide any service needed to do that.
Okay. Thank you. And I want to thank the entire panel. This was actually a very, very informative hearing for everybody on the committee on both sides of the aisle. And now it's going to go over to the Consumer Protection Subcommittee for action on the BOSS Act. But this was really useful for us. And I'd like to insert into the record by unanimous consent the report by the New York Attorney General on the ticketing industry entitled Obstructed View, What's Blocking New Yorkers from Getting Tickets, and the report by the General Accountability Office entitled Event Ticket Sales, Market Characteristics, and Consumer Protection Issues. And in addition, I'd ask unanimous consent that the contents of the document binder be introduced into the record and to authorize staff to make the appropriate redactions. Without objection, so ordered. And let's see, I guess I'd like to remind members, I'd like to ask the witnesses if you've been requested to provide additional information that you do so. And with that, this subcommittee is adjourned. Thank you.